go. Episode 1, Sound of Music. Oh boy, have we had quite the technical difficulties, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm Andrew King. I'm going to refer to myself as Andy for this because
Andy?
why not? Andy. And who's that voice in the background you hear?
I am
Who is it?
I am Kuroda Kyosuke, as my friend Steve would say. No, it's Rob. Just call me Rob. That's it.
I was going to ask you how to pronounce that, so thank you for that.
I always call it Kuroda Kyosuke, so we'll just call me Rob. I'm Rob on this channel.
So this is a new podcast that Rob and I are going to be doing. And boy, am I going to tell you, this first episode, it's not going to get any more amateurish than this. But that's okay. That's the fun. So the name of this podcast is going to be called The Sound of Music.
Yep.
And by the way, Rob, so I guess I should talk about where does that name come from. Sound of Music, that is the name of a song by the band Porcupine Tree. Fun fact, Rob, I was listening to that song last night for the first time in quite some time, and guess what?
What?
It's pronounced music. Who cares? Because we're going to pronounce it music, because I think of Sound of Music, and I think of the musical Sound of Music, and no way.
And when I hear Zach, I think of Zach from Saved by the Bell. So there you go.
See, we're not even going. See, I'm getting started already with this. So it's pronounced Sound of Music. That's M-U-Z-A-K. I think it sounds cooler anyways.
Me too.
And yeah, so here we go. So let's talk about what the hell we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so basically we're basically gonna do a podcast every maybe 2 weeks, every month maybe. And go ahead.
No, so I was just going to chime in there. So I think being that Rob and I both have our own crazy schedules, we were thinking the idea would be, for now, to do every other week or until we kind of get the swing of things. I guess the direction we want to see this going before we do come up with a more consistent schedule.
Yeah, and get the technical issues sorted out, considering that I'm recording you off the speakers of my laptop.
It's all right. It's sounding not too bad.
Yeah, it sounds fine. But yeah, I'm really excited to do this, man. We've been talking, basically for those, just to give you guys a little information about us, we've been friends for a really long time. It's getting close to 10 years or so, man. As hard to believe as that sounds. But ever since we first met, we bonded over music, and we discovered a lot of music together, and a lot of bands and albums and what have you. A lot of album swapping, a lot of debates, and a bunch of other stuff. So we've been talking about doing something like this for a while, and you originally came to me about this maybe 5 months ago or something, a few months ago.
Yeah, I want to say yeah, that sounds about right. 5-6 months ago. I almost feel like it was even a year ago.
Yeah, it could have been.
But either way, it was something that I've been thinking about. Back in college, I used to do a little bit of radio broadcasting. Had a couple of shows of my own that I hosted. And so I've always wanted to get back into doing something along those lines. And I've really gotten into the podcast format myself over the past couple of years. So when thinking about wanting to do something like this on my own, I mean, you were the first person that came to mind. And the reason why I say I feel like it might have been a year ago is because you and I don't want to say we didn't lose touch with each other, but there were a few years where we didn't have a lot of contact, and we kind of sort of reconciled, if you want. I don't even know if that's the appropriate word.
We just reconnected. We just kind of reconnected after a while. Yeah.
Reconnected, definitely. Better word for that. Reconnected, and that was around the same time I was thinking about doing something like this, and I mean, you were the first guy that came to mind.
Well, you were mentioning you had the background in radio broadcasting, and then some of you guys will know who are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Obviously, I've got a separate channel myself called Kuroda Kyosuke. There's the shameless plug for that. It's a gaming channel, and I've been doing a lot of videos and stuff like that. But I've done a couple of like podcast-esque discussions with my friend James on gaming, like we covered E3 and stuff like that. But I've never done a full-on podcast before, so that was appealing. And also for my channel, I've been wanting to do music-related content practically since I started it. And although it's like primarily a game channel, I've done a couple little things, like I've done some album reviews and whatnot. But in a way, it sort of seemed a little out of place on the channel I do now. So you asking me about doing both a podcast, which I've been wanting to do, and something music related, I was totally on board. So, and I think it's better to do a separate thing than to do it on my channel anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. And so I guess with that being said, we should give overview of how we're going to approach the channel/podcast. I say channel/podcast because we are hoping for subsequent episodes to record via video on YouTube. As Rob said before, we had tons of technical difficulties. What are you gonna?
Yeah, it's our first episode, and we'll figure some stuff out. I'm working on getting a better camera myself and some better equipment, so we'll see what we can do in that regard. But now we have a bunch of ideas for this channel/podcast, but for this one, and I'll let you explain it more, Andrew, I think for now we'll probably go with this format for at least the first several podcasts, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree for sure. So what Rob and I will be doing is, so this first episode is actually going to be, I guess, sort of the first, I'm drawing a blank on words, so screw it. This episode, we're going to be talking about the band King Crimson, and we're actually going to be doing a whole series on King Crimson, the band.
Mm-hmm.
How it's going to work is we are going to be breaking this series down to 6 episodes. Each episode, we're going to talk about a period in the band and album go together with that time period. But with this channel, we're also going to do our own, I guess you could say, solo content as well too, as well as other collaborations together.
And also,
go ahead.
And also probably have guests, I would imagine. I've already got people asking to guest, which is pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely. So where we're going to go with the channel is I'm going to, down the road, post my own solo content. Rob is too. It's all going to be on the Sound of Muzak channel. We do have a couple of other series after we wrap up the Crimson one, already in the works that we want to do in the future. But when putting this podcast together, King Crimson was just a no-brainer. We both have a love for the band. Timing is kind of really good too. This year is the band's 50th anniversary as a band, 50th anniversary of their debut album in the Court of the Crimson King.
And and I was gonna say that also all of their albums were, like, their entire discography was just put on Spotify.
Their albums were just put on all streaming platforms, Apple Music, Spotify. Yep. They're doing the 50th anniversary tour. Not to mention, you and I have quite the mutual love for this band. So again, it was just a no-brainer. Picking King Crimson is the first for this particular series that we're doing.
And in tandem with that, I mean, the format of the show is going to be basically, when we cover a band, it's going to be several podcasts long, and we're going to basically cut up their career into sections. And King Crimson also lended itself well to that because there's very defining moments of their career, like chunks of it, so we can dedicate a podcast to each chunk of that career. So sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. And boy, do they have quite the career. So let's get into that really quick, Rob. Let's break down what each episode's going to be.
Okay, sure. Well, this episode is going to be basically the first 4 albums, which we'll call this one, the early years, I guess. And this one would be basically the first album in the Court of the Crimson King, the very iconic debut album. In their second album, In the Wake of Poseidon, their third album, Lizard, and their fourth album, Islands, which are all very interesting albums. And then, I don't know if you want to break down the other ones, feel free.
Yeah, so that's episode 1. Episode 2 is going to be, I guess, what you can call the Red era, if you will, and that's going to cover Lark's Tongue and Aspect, Stars and Bible Black, and Red. Mm-hmm. That's going to be episode 2. Episode 3 will be the 80s, which will cover Discipline Beat and 3 of a Perfect Pair.
Yep.
Episode 4 is going to be the 90s and the 2000s, which will cover the albums Thrack, The Construction of Light, blank out on that one for a second,
Yep.
and The Power to Believe.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the first 4 episodes. We're going to cover all the studio records within those first 4 episodes.
Yeah, and in preparation for it, we both have listened to all the albums at least once. Sounds like you've been listening to them a lot.
Yeah, and we'll get into that more. And then episode 5, we're going to do our rankings. So we'll rank the albums, as well as we are going to do a top 20. Each of us are going to do our top 20, and then within our top 20, because I'm sure we're going to have overlap with some of our favorites, we're going to construct that into a guide to King Crimson playlist that we'll share on Spotify.
Yep. It'll be a Spotify playlist that we'll put in the description of the YouTube channel, and once I figure out the ins and outs of SoundCloud, it'll be posted on there too.
Yes. And then we've been talking, we might do an episode 6, which will cover the various projects, collaborations, side projects, stuff like that. I almost feel like that could be an episode in itself.
Yep.
So that might be something that we do as well after album and song rankings.
I just want to state to the hardcore King Crimson fans, because I know they exist and they may stumble upon this, we have not listened to everything because they have such a huge amount of, like, a wealth of content. It's impossible. I mean, just like Alone, like we were talking about before, Alone, like all the 40th anniversary remasters that have tons of bonus material just on the 4 albums alone. It would take me a month to listen to all of it. So we're not going to cover every single thing, but we're going to try to, at least within the realm of their studio albums, cover it as much as we can.
And I'll tell you, at this time of this recording, currently I have not listened to every studio album.
Yeah.
So I know, being at episode 1, we're covering the first 4 records. Those have been in my heavy rotation of listening for the past several weeks. But a lot of the later stuff, I'm not as familiar. So that was kind of another, I guess, idea with this podcast, with picking King Crimson and doing this in general, was kind of forced you and I to really dive into this band.
Yeah, I like that with other bands going forward, because there's tons of bands that I really love that I know even most of their material, but there's like those straggler albums that I always meant to listen to or maybe listen to once and just never got into. So you're absolutely right. That was definitely a very appealing aspect of doing this podcast and this format, really, that we can kind of deep dive the band and who knows, maybe discover some hidden gems, you know?
Oh, for sure. And I can tell you, just with, listening to these first 4 records, there are definitely a few I might have not been too keen on in the past, but really got it. But we'll get into that as we cover the albums. But I just want to, before we get started, a couple of things. You just mentioned King Crimson fan. You guys, you are passionate about this band, as we are. With that being said, let me please emphasize, this is my opinion. This is Rob's opinion. These are just our opinions. I know that even Rob and I are going to have some disagreement, and we talked about that already, and it's going to happen, and that's going to be the fun of this show. But please, it is our opinions. Keep it, please.
Yes.
And the only other thing is, before we get started, the other thing we're going to do as we go through the albums, when we're done talking about a record, keep switching back and forth between album and record, by the way.
That's all right. Keep doing it. I love it.
We'll end it before we move on to the next one. We'll each state our 3 favorite tracks, as well as when we're done at the end of the episode, we'll rank the records that we're covering. So even though we're covering the first 4, at the very end, you'll do your ranking of your top 4 for this period, and I'll do the same, of course.
That sounds good to me.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
I want to add that it's time to start.
It is time to start with the debut album. In
Yes.
the court of the Crimson King. Parentheses.
Hey, be careful. We're gonna get copy. We're gonna get content ID'd right
Yeah,
now.
good point.
Be
An
careful.
observation by King Crimson.
Yeah, be careful. Be careful, Andrew. We're gonna get content ID'd. Not even joking. Not even joking. This is a quick side note, but there was a dude who got got a copyright strike on one of his videos because he mentioned the song Bohemian Rhapsody. He didn't play a sample. He didn't sing it.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah. So Mr. Fripp, we love you, but please don't strike our podcast down.
Mr. Frippo Pants, chill out. Just chill out.
Anyway, sorry. You were at it. So 1969, In the Court of the Crimson King, the first debut album.
In the Court of the Crimson King, released October 10th, 1969, on Island Records in England, as well as Atlantic Records in America. It reached number 5 on the UK charts. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And number 28 on the US Billboard 200, where it was later certified gold. And as far as I know, by the way, that might be the only album of theirs that's been certified gold. I don't know if they ever reached platinum status. I could be wrong, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, so, God, man, this record, this is... Where do we even begin?
Well, it's one of those albums that I think is really beloved and well regarded for a reason. And it's particularly for a debut album. It's like you were mentioning that, you know, it reached number 5 on the UK and 28 on the US Billboard Top 200. I mean, that is impressive considering it's their first album. You know, it's pretty incredible.
Oh, for sure. And actually, I guess we should discuss, too. Just before when this album came out, they made their live date around April of 1969, playing at Hyde Park, opening for the Rolling Stones. And think about that for a second. Think about that era of the Stones. What would that be? Let It Bleed? And that's like the Stones at their peak. But can you imagine a Rolling Stones concert and this band, King Crimson, opening up? And I would imagine they had to open up a Schizoid band. That opening riff. And,
yeah.
God, what were they thinking?
This even predates Black Sabbath, so you know, a song like Schizoid Man, and we'll get on this when we do track by track. But you know, if they opened with a track like that, it was really heavy and very different for the time, because a lot of it was like a lot of music was that, and I'm not gonna poke fun at it a little bit, but I do love this music. But a lot of it was like kind of hippy dippy light stuff for the most part, like a lot of you know, a lot of folk was really popular at the time. You know, the Beatles were still around. You had a lot of that 60s pop, and then you have this kind of dark, heavy English band that just is there. And I'm reading your notes here. They played before, like, it was between 250,000 and 500,000 people. I mean, holy crap, that must have blown minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I have to emphasize, opening up for the Stones, you got to think people are there wanting to hear, like, Gimme Shelter, You Can't Always Get What You Want. Like, that's that era of the Stones. And then you've got this band coming out and like, I can only imagine what the reaction was to that.
Yeah, and a lot of people were probably on acid, so they were probably freaking out.
That too, yeah. That is true, yeah. Among other things.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah.
So something I forgot to mention before, too, as we're talking about In the Court of the Crimson King, is for each album, this is a band, by the way, other than its sole member, Robert Fripp, that each lineup is just constantly changing.
Yep.
So we're going to also break down band members that played on each record that we talk about.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can go through them really quick. So this is the original lineup of King Crimson. Really, it's in a lot of ways often regarded as the best lineup of Crimson. I know that's debatable, but the band members are...
We'll be getting into that later, by the way.
Oh, definitely. The band members are Michael Giles, who played drums, percussion, backing vocals. Greg Lake, later of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, lead vocals and bass. Ian MacDonald, later of Foreigner. Woodwinds, and he plays he plays a ton of instruments on this album. Saxophone, flute, clarinet, bass clarinet. mellotron, harpsichord, piano, organ, vibraphone. This guy's crazy. And Pete Sinfield did all the lyrics for the album. And then, of course, we have to talk about our number one man here, Robert Fripp, on electric and acoustic guitars.
Old Frippo Pants.
Old Frippo Pants, the sole member of the band who's been on every album. And basically, he's pretty much the driving force of the band at this point.
I mean, really, once all is said and done, he is King Crimson.
Yeah, and basically this lineup dissolved right after the first album with only Robert Fripp and Pete Sinfield remaining in the band. And yeah, just a lot. There's been a lot of analysis of this album and this lineup, and many people say that this lineup is the best lineup. I know that's a debatable statement, but it was certainly a powerhouse band at that time, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. And talking about a band that was just way ahead of their time. I mean, there are people that, King Crimson is the first two albums. Mm-hmm. That's how passionate that they are about, this being the lineup of the band. And like I said, we're going to get into that later, our opinions of what the best era of the band was. What do you think? Should we go track by track?
Yeah, let's do the tracks. Let's see here. Go ahead. You lead the show here, Andy. Yes, I'm gonna call you Andy. It sounds weird. I always call you Andrew. But
Andy.
Okay, so go ahead, Andy.
All right, so here we go. Opening up with track one. Oh, and I should point out, notice in my notes, Rob, I very much broke this down into side one, side two, and I think we'll talk about that too, because I know I do side note really quick. A lot of my favorite bands, some of their albums, I will go ahead and resequence them based on how I wish the album came out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that might, by the way, that might even be a series that we get into at a later time. But anyways, I'll resequence, take songs out. I might include B-sides, but when I'm doing that, I always think of the vinyl form. Even if it's a contemporary band whose record I've resequenced, I always think in that vinyl format.
So it's side A and side B, you're saying?
Side A, side B.
Yeah.
Side B also has to have, an opener to kick it off. So I kind of think in that. But we'll get into. So track one, here we go. 21st Century Schizoid Man. You may have heard of this song. Have you heard of this song before? You know this one?
I might have heard of it. I did because I played Guitar Hero, whatever it was that it was on.
This was on Guitar Hero? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was on one of the later Guitar Heroes. Anyway, go ahead.
So I guess you could say if there's a well-known Crimson song, it would be this one. And boy, what an opening track this song is. When we were putting this show together, one of the things I was looking into, and I could not find it, Greg Leg's vocal, that distorted sound. How does he do that? It almost sounds like auto-tune in a way, but in 1969,
it almost sounds like at times like they plug the microphone into the guitar amp, and at the same time he's singing, Fripp is just going dun 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 dun. I don't know. I have no idea. It's weird. It's a weird effect.
But so cool, nonetheless, and no one was doing that.
And as
I was reading... Go ahead.
No, you go first. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, so I mean, again, this song, it's classic. It's iconic. This is the song to really associate the band with. Although not my favorite King Crimson song, it is, if there's going to be a song that we're going to, attach to the band, it's definitely 21st Century Schizoid. Interesting enough, I was reading up on this song a little bit, and I found a quote of an interview with Robert Fripp in 1969 saying that this song was dedicated to an American political personality whom we all know and love dearly. His name is Spiro Agnew. And for those of you who don't know who Spiro Agnew is, he was Richard Nixon's first vice president for Gerald Ford. Yeah, so fun fact for you there.
Wow, I actually didn't know that, so that's pretty awesome. I wanted to mention about this song, This song was a first on so many levels, and I think it's very fitting that it's the first track of the album. And, we mentioned heavy metal. In some ways, you could say this was the first proper metal song.
Proto-metal, for sure.
I know that's definitely debatable, but this is pre-Sabbath by a year. And it's got to be the heaviest thing, the heaviest song that I know of, anyway, up until that point. And,
I'm pulling that up right now because I'm curious.
Yeah.
So we already said that Port came out October 69. I'm curious, when did the first Black Sabbath record come out? Keep talking.
I think it was 70 or 69. It was 69. It was around the same time. I mean, I think Crimson might have beat. Well, let's see, when did it come out? It came out in okay, so it came out in October 69. So it was close. Yeah.
Recorded October 16th, released February 13th, 1970. So not too far off, actually.
Yeah. So it's definitely kind of, like you said, a proto-metal thing, but beyond the metal aspect of it too. I mean, the prog rock was born with this record, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there were trends pointing in that direction with, albums like Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles, and you had the Mothers of Invention doing some stuff, and you had some other 60s bands like Jethro Tull were around. You had bands like Gentle Giant starting, and Yes, I think started around this time too, but really I think King Crimson, like this album, Court of the Crimson King, was really the birth of prog rock. And
I 100% agree. I mean, this really is the first progressive rock album. Again, like you said, there are those records that kind of form, the prog rock as we know it prior. You said Pepper, a couple of other Inventions, earlier albums. I mean, even Hendrix, I would point to a little bit. But if we're going to pick an album that really started it all and really laid out the blueprint of 70s progressive rock, it's this record.
And then, of course, the album cover is on screen, as you guys can see, since we couldn't do video. It's a very iconic album cover. And the guy, I can't remember the guy's name. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm bad with the research here. I should have done my homework. But I did read this guy's name the other day, and this was apparently his one and only album cover he ever painted, and he died shortly after the album was released. So.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name though. So bad on me. Sorry.
And a song like this, just a monster of an opener. For some, this could be a hard song to follow up.
Uh-huh.
But that's not here. I think our next track, which we'll get into, I Talk to the Wind, is sort of a nice palate cleanser. Just coming off of Schizoid Man, we've got this beautiful ballad, great vocals by Greg Lake. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, before I get right into it, I was going to say, I think between these two songs, it really highlights the entire ethos of King Crimson, and that's dark and light. And
yeah, that's a good point.
Schizoid Man, the lyrics are dark, the music's really heavy. It gets very, very chaotic, especially at the end of the song. There's those crazy time signature changes, the percussion, and I have to say, by the way, and I just want to say it because it's especially highlighted on Schizoid Man, Mike Giles might be the best drummer they ever had. The guy does some crazy stuff on the drums there. The rhythm section is just unbelievable. But
I don't know.
I know they had Bill Bruford too, so that's why I said might be. But anyway, but going to what you're saying about Talk to the Wind, yeah, I love how it, like you said, it might be a hard song to follow, but I actually think I Talk to the Wind is the perfect song to follow because it's so light. It starts out with that like flute, and it's kind of very quiet, and it's got a nice vocal melody to it. It's nice. It's again that balance of lightness and dark that King Crimson tends to teeter on,
Oh, and for sure, I think, and again, I mean, Greg Lake's vocals. I mean, some of his. I've never really dived into Emerson Homer too much, but in terms of King Crimson, I think this is some of his best vocal performances.
Yes, I agree. I think, and being somebody who has listen to a lot of Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff, I would agree. I would totally agree.
I almost feel like, and there's a couple other songs that I feel this way too that we're going to talk about in this episode. A little bit of a Beatles influence.
Yeah.
With Lake's vocal specifically, reminds me of a little bit of Lennon on some of the more, solo John Lennon acoustic stuff. Even Beatles as well.
I've always thought that too. I always thought that Greg Lake had a bit of a Lennon sound to his voice. So you're definitely not alone there.
Yeah, and he and the Beatles are my favorite band, and Lennon's my Beatles specifically. So that's something I like here for sure.
Yeah, and we should say that while Schizoid Man is very, it's got that chaotic progginess to it, and it's kind of a flashy song in terms of instrumentation and the musicality of it. I Talk to the Wind kind of has a lot of subtleties to it, which I really like.
I almost feel like a song like I Talk to the Wind alone laid the blueprint for Yes.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree.
Yes, you agree with Yes.
I remember actually watching a documentary about Yes, and they definitely cited this album as a huge influence on them. And I really think you noticed, and without sounding like a pretentious prog rock fan here, there's something I think progressive rock matured a little bit after this album, musically, in the sense where it kind of went from a lot of, and I love a lot of like psychedelic stuff from the '60s, but it really became more technically impressive in some ways. Technically doesn't always mean better, as we've talked about before, but I just mean their musicality. There was definitely a lot of growing after this album. So
I agree, and I will say that I tend to sort of drift off to the more prog rock with the sort of mystical lyrics, if you will, which this band on a couple albums later that we'll talk about today sort of drift off to a little bit.
Yeah.
I like more of the philosophical stuff, which is very heavy on these first couple of records, as well as some of this albums from the Red era as well too.
Yeah. I personally like both, but we can discuss that as well. Speaking of philosophical lyrics, I don't know if you want to move on to Epitaph, but
yes, that is a great transition, by the way. So Epitaph is track 3, also closing side 1. Oh boy, what song?
This song, to me, and I'm just going to say this now, is probably my favorite song on the album.
Okay.
And both lyrically and instrumentally, and I think it's probably the best vocals on the album. And there's something particularly about the lyrics, Pete Sinfield's lyrics on this album, that just always get to me. And I should state right out here so you guys know for future reference, I'm not a huge lyrics guy. I think they're important to a certain extent, but they're always kind of the last thing that I look at for a song. And it's not, again, not trying to be snooty that it's like, oh, it's all about the music, blah, blah, blah. It's just what I listen to in a song. The music's got to sound good first. But Epitaph is one of those where it's one of those perfect blends where the music is fantastic, the melody is fantastic, the instrumentation is fantastic, and the lyrics are fantastic. And I don't know what it is about this song. I absolutely love it. Particularly the lines where it's pretty much like the chorus lines, like, confusion will be my epitaph as I crawl a cracked and broken path. If we make it, we can all sit back and laugh, but I fear tomorrow I'll be crying. I don't know. There's something about those lines that just always get to me. It's a... Yeah,
no, I mean, I agree. I was reading another interview. I read a lot of interviews in preparation of the show. This one was with Greg Lake, and he summarized this song as basically a song about looking with confusion upon a world gone mad. And I think that not only summarize this song, but that's really the theme of this record.
Yes, it very much is, and it's not afraid to have a very realistic view of the darker side of humanity, and I don't know. That really is a deep song, man. I'm glad that Greg Lake said that, because that was always my impression of the song.
This song might be a good, really quick, something you and I talked about as well when we were putting the show together was, I know when I was listening to these first 4 albums, I was listening to them in many different contexts. So I just came back from New Jersey, a trip from New Jersey last night, and I had all 4 albums played in my car, but I was listening to them on different headphones. I was going on walks, and this song is definitely a song that you've got to listen to on headphones. Even if you just listen to just this track before this album, this is a song that you just really put headphones on, close your eyes, you're not doing anything else, and just listen.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. It's one of those ones where you really connect with it if you... There's something about listening on headphones, it really connects you to the music, you know? You become very absorbed in it. I actually listened to this album a couple times, and I listened to it one day at work, because at night I can just kind of listen to music and everything, and because working for me has become, because I've done the same job for a while, sorry for the sidetrack here, but it's so methodical for me, I don't have to think about it. I can really just absorb myself into what I'm listening to, whether it's a podcast, audiobook, music, and this one, again, although I've heard this song many, many times, I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, oh god, it's so good. So
absolutely. Any last thoughts on Epitaph?
No, can I say real quick, again, with this album, I don't know if you want me to acknowledge this yet, but the versions of the albums, of the 4 albums that we listened to, and of this album, were the 40th anniversary editions. I don't know if the Steven Wilson remixes.
Yes, we did not mention that, and that's... Yes, so we, as we said, part of the reason why we're doing this is catalog is now on Spotify. We're both poor little peasants. I know I have a couple of their albums on CD and vinyl, and you. Yeah. So we are basing our opinions on the Spotify versions, which, yes, are the 40th anniversary remaster. Some of them are remixes, which were done by Steven Wilson. We mentioned the band Porcupine Tree before. Steven Wilson is sort of like the Robert Fripp of that band. Now I'm going that we are basing that each of our I guess listens off the Spotify versions. I know you have some of the albums on vinyl you've been listening to.
Yep.
I've been doing the same. But we are basing some of the B-sides and bonus tracks that we're going to talk about directly from the Spotify versions of the albums.
Yes, and I should say that I have heard 3 versions of this album. I own it on vinyl, the original vinyl, which I've listened to many times. I used to have on my iPod the original, what I don't know what remaster that was before the 40th anniversary one, but I had that one on my iPod.
I think they did, at least they promoted it as the 30th anniversary. So to the 30th anniversaries.
So that was probably the 30th anniversary, but I have to say, and I've only listened to it twice, this version on Spotify, the Steven Wilson version. It's hands down my favorite version. It almost felt like I was listening to the album for the first time again. You can just, I don't know what that man does when he remixes these albums, but it really, like, everything really shone. I mean, especially listening to headphones, you can hear every instrument. You can really feel how layered these tracks are, how many different instruments are on it. On this song, particularly the mellotron really soars. Ian McDonald's mellotron playing. A point I wanted to bring up here is I really think, I don't know if you would agree with this, Andrew, but I really feel like, much how like the synthesizer was the kind of instrument of the 80s, I really feel like the mellotron was the, instrument of the 60s. A lot of bands used it. I think the mellotron, no album uses the mellotron better in the 60s than this album, in my opinion.
I would say from like 67 to 71, 72.
Yeah.
The mellotron is a very instrument for sure, and I would agree. I don't use any better than on this album and some of the subsequent King Crimson records as well.
It gives.
So here I go again, back and forth with the record album. Pick one, Andy. Pick one.
I know, it's all right, but there's something very like ethereal and like very just I don't know. It almost gives it an orchestral quality at times to some of the tracks, and particularly Epitaph. It adds to the kind of whole epicness of the track.
On Epitaph, as well as the title track,
yes,
as well.
Yes. Let's move on if you'd like, because we've spent a lot of time already.
I did, yeah. Now I'm looking at the time like, oh my god. I did really quick before we move on to side two. We really got to wrap this first album up.
Yeah.
Just going back to your point on the 40th anniversary. So I will say, because they are on Spotify, if you don't have these albums on vinyl, then the 40th anniversaries are the way to go.
Yes.
I own some of the 30th anniversary editions on CD, and they're just too muddy sounding in my opinion. So
I agree.
If you don't have access to these albums on vinyl, then the 40th anniversary is the way to go. They're expensive if you know, someone like myself and you like to have the physical copy, but those are the editions that are on Spotify. That would be what I recommend. But moving on to side two. And all right, so this is where I start to have my problems with this band.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's going to be with this track, Moonchild. First 4 minutes, I love it.
Yeah, me too.
Love it. It's got this cool, hazy, laid-back sound. Again, we're getting a little bit of that distortion with the vocals, but this song doesn't need to be 10 plus minutes, and it's noodling. It's not even noodling.
It's totally noodling, and
it is noodling. It's totally noodling. You're right.
It's prog noodling, but I think this is certainly the second part of the song. First of all, let me say about the first part. I love how whimsical it is, like the lyrics and stuff. You were talking about the kind of weird, kind of mystical lyrics. I'm a big fan because I'm just a big nerd. I love fantasy novels, and I love like stuff like Zelda. And I just really like mystical lyrics. But which Pete Sinfield's pretty well known for this period, doing a lot of whimsical lyrics. But anyway, the whole sound, you're right, the first 4 minutes is great. I've never really liked the noodling for the next whatever it is, like 6 minutes of the song. I did actually it didn't bother me as much listening to it on the 40th anniversary editions, though, for some reason.
I will tell you that, and by the way, the lyrics on this one I actually really so the mystical sort of, I guess, style of lyrics don't bother me on this.
Yeah.
If this song was 4 minutes, it would be my second favorite track on this album.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big
second favorite track. I really do like this song, and every time I listen to the album, once that quiet noodling comes in, I skip. I go right to the left.
Yeah. I kind of agree. That's the one low point of this album. I don't hate it, but you're right. There's often times where I'm just like, I just want to skip this.
I find with this band, and we're gonna come across on subsequent albums, that King Crimson is a very improv heavy based band, especially during the Red. I always find that they don't pick the improvisation pieces on their albums. Moonchild is an example of that.
I think it's obviously a testament to the huge jazz influence of their music, and also I think most likely a conscious effort to have a unique sound as well on this album. So I'm kind of willing to let them get away. Like, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the second half of Moonchild, but I'm kind of willing to let them get away with it a little bit, just because it was the first, or one of the first albums to really go that direction. And I think, as much as sometimes noodling is a bit too much on prog records, I think the influence of that was probably important to a certain extent.
On this album, I agree. I'm going to let them get away with it.
Yeah.
But it's going to become a bigger problem on other albums that we'll talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to the last track so we can wrap this up. So, Court of the Crimson King, the
Court of the Crimson King. This is the title track as well as the last track. And this one is actually my favorite song on the record. Little fun fact about this one, there was a Atlantic record guy, advert, whatever you want to call him, at the time of the album's release, that claimed it featured the heaviest riffs recorded to date since Gustav Mahler's 8th Symphony, and I know I'm not pronouncing his name right. Great 20th century classical composer, by the way, I'm a pretty big fan of. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is weird. I'm surprised that, and not like, Schizoid Man.
I will tell you that what made an album great for me, one of the things I look for with any any band I listen to, any album, any style it's gotta have strong opener and a strong closer.
I agree.
And
yes.
boy, does this song really end this record on a high.
If this song wasn't on the album and hadn't ended it well, particularly with like the second half of Moonchild as we talked about, the album might not be as nearly perfect as it is, in my opinion. But it really, this is one of the strongest tracks in my opinion. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely one of the strongest ones.
It really is, and I just love everything about it, from the opening drum intro to just the bombastic chorus. This song is just like this song quit them. it really can be. I would imagine, I know you've seen King Crimson live. I'm seeing them in September. This is a song I'm looking forward to seeing.
It was one of the highlights of the show. Goosebumps, man. Goosebumps. Just the
I'm sure.
The soaring chorus, the mellotron, as we talked about earlier, the vocal, the lyrics are great. This is probably one of Greg Lake's best vocal performances, in my opinion. Like you said, the guitar, it's all really fantastic. I can't praise this song enough. It's
same, and then just how it ends on a very, very mellow note. It's like I said, it's my favorite. I think it's a great track. I don't think it's too long. I just came across a really cool cover you should check out.
I've heard it. The Lennon Claypool Delirium.
The Lennon Claypool Delirium, yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course is with Sean Lennon and Les Claypool for Primus.
Yep.
Really cool cover. I like that a lot. But yeah, I mean that's how you close an album, as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree. If there's one thing that I want to say that I would want them to add to this album, they had another song called Mars around this time. Have you ever heard that track?
We're gonna get into that a little more during Poseidon, but that is actually a Gustav Holt song. I don't know if you're familiar with the Planet Suite.
No, I'm not.
That is what that is from. So that is actually a cover. That is not a King Crimson.
It would have been cool if they had included, though, because it's got that schizoid heaviness to it, and it would have been kind of neat to have a second track like that. But otherwise, really the album is nearly perfect, you know. But it would
for sure. And well, actually, you do kind of get, because the Devil's Triangle is based off of
True
Mars. But I do see where you're getting at with that. Even if some of that was maybe incorporated to Moon.
Oh, wow. It's a Moonchild?
Yeah, because then I can justify that song being longer, have that cool first 4 minutes of that haziness,
and then got heavy.
Get back into bombastic mode, maybe a little bit of that chillness at the end to still segue into the Court of the Crimson King, because I do like how Moonchild does transition, end of Moonchild, that is, into Court of the Crimson.
Yes, I do too, yeah. But yeah, I can't praise that song. You have anything else to say about Court of the Crimson King, the song?
No, that's all I really have. I mean, I'm thinking because of time, let's just quickly, we can mention these B-sides and bonus tracks. I don't think any of these are really of no in-depth have a conversation about. There is a radio edit version of Schizoid Man, which just listen to the full version, but it exists. There's a duo version if I Talk to the Wind. That's fine, I guess. Again, stick with the original. And then there's also a song that's live called Amanda City, which is an early version of Pictures in the City. I was just listening to that this morning, and it was okay. You could definitely tell they were still working out the kinks to that song. I prefer what ended up being the actual song on the next record, which we'll talk about.
Did you listen to the 50th anniversary tracks from this album too, like Schizoid Man?
I did. The Schizoid Man was the radio edit. Other than that, have there been any other 50th anniversary?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
I'm pulling up my Spotify.
I don't think so. I think that's the main one. Yeah, I mean, really and truly, like the bonus stuff is cool sometimes to listen to, but for the most part, I think like unless you're like a hardcore Crimson addict, like if you're just a casual fan or somebody who wants to discover the band for the first time, just stick with the album. I mean, really, the album tracks are pretty perfect in my opinion. Huh? Sorry, you cut out there, Andrew.
I think they released
Andrew, you cut out. I'll have to cut this out of the video. Crap.
All right, we'll X that out because clearly that.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right.
So sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was the only one released as a 50th anniversary single. I'm sure there'll be more to come. The one that just came out today was the 25th. So you got 25 more singles to go.
My God, yeah. There's so many that we could go on and on about. We'll try to go a little quicker with the next albums, but I think it's okay that we spent a lot of time on this because the first album really is probably their most iconic album, and it's the one that, like I said, it was pretty much the birth of prog rock. It was the birth of just like a lot of jazz and other influences and classical influences in rock and roll. In general, in a lot of ways, and it's a classic, you know. I mean, I don't know what else we could say about this album. It really changed the game. Like it really took psychedelic rock, like I said, and kind of matured it a bit, and gave it some other influences, and it was really the birth of progressive rock, really, an entire genre.
I mean, and in terms said already, it really was a game changer. I mean, for me, Moonchild, the second half of Moonchild does bring it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is a classic album. It really is.
Yeah.
This, like we said before, this album is the birth of progressive rock. It's really kind of understandable why old Frippo Pants struggled to
Frippo Pants
follow this one up, which I think that's a good transition to our next album here.
Yeah, and also we should mention definitely that at the end of this period of the band, the band itself just dissolved with Robert Fripp and Pete Sinfield being the only remaining members. Not helping that Pete Sinfield did not play instruments and he just wrote the lyrics, so it was essentially a one-man musical show.
Yeah, he did have a handle on the production.
Yeah.
A little bit. But yeah, so it kind of became Frippo Pants for this one. Oh, that's in the Wake of Poseidon, by the way.
Really quick, before we get to the second one, did you want to rank the tracks of the Court of the Crimson King?
Yes.
Okay.
So how do you want to do this? You want to do your ranking first, and then we'll
Sure.
do mine?
I'll just say I'm not going to rank the tracks. I'll just give my top three.
Excuse me.
My favorite track is Epitaph. Followed closely by Court of the Crimson King, and third would have to be Schizoid Man. Then I'd probably, if I had to rank the other two, it would probably go I Talk to the Wind and then Moonchild. But like you said, if that whole noodly part on the second half of Moonchild wasn't in there, it probably would be ranked higher. So.
Yeah, for sure. And so really, my three is the same as yours, just different order. Again, my number one for this one, King.
Court of the Crimson King, yeah.
By Court of the Crimson King, followed by Epitaph, and then Schizoid Man being number three.
I can't really argue with any of that, so I think we pretty much agree on this album pretty much wholeheartedly. I mean, I'm sorry, man. I got nothing to debate you on this one.
No. I'm thinking though, the debate might start with this next album, which we are moving on to album number 2, 1970s, In the Wake of Poseidon.
And it's right on the screen right here for you guys. This is a gatefold sleeve. Weird cover.
I love it though. It
Me
might
too.
be one of my favorites.
Me too.
Released in May 1970, again on Island Records and Atlantic Records, the U.S. Believe it or not, to date, this album is their highest charting in the U.K.
So random.
Number 4. I think we said Court was number 5. This one reached number 4.
Wow.
That I found interesting, which I guess kind of makes sense following off the hype, of Court of the Crimson King.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely makes sense. The album was recorded during instability in the band, as we just discussed, with several personnel changes, but repeats the style of their first album, which I disagree with a little bit, but we'll get into that in a second. We have both Frippo Pants here on guitar, electric piano, devices, whatever that means, devices.
He must be into some weird shit, so let's keep.
No comment. Peter Sinfield lyrics, production as well. Even though there was.
They're the only two official members on this album, right?
They are, but pretty much, even though they left, the rest of the original band is back. Greg Lake did come back to do most of the vocals on this album, as well as Michael Giles, and then I believe, Peter Giles, his brother, did bass.
Who was part of Giles, and Fripp, which we can mention very briefly. It's like basically those Peter Giles, Mike Giles, the drummer for King Crimson, and Robert Fripp. It was an album they did before Court of the Crimson King.
Yes. So. And then we even have, am I pronouncing that right, Haskell?
I think it's Gordon Haskell or something like that.
Haskell, okay. Yeah. Gordon Haskell, who ended up being the singer of the next album. He does vocals on Cadence and Cascade, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's some other members too, but we won't get into that.
The only original member that did not play on this album was Ian McDonald. They got Melk Collins, who later joined the band as well.
Oh, that's right. Yes, good call. All right, so let's get into it track by track.
Okay, so the first one is Peace a Beginning, right? It's just I don't really have much to say about this one. It's just kind of a brief little...
Nothing really to say.
It's a brief little, intro track. It's a minute long?
Yeah, not even. It's pretty. It's cool. Fine.
Yeah, it's pretty much just some vocals by Greg Lake. It's just a very simple track. I really have nothing to say about it.
So moving on then. So track two, Pictures of the City. So this is going to be where sort of that chord comparison really begins. And this song is definitely the schizoid man of this record.
Yes.
I mean, even just right down to thematically, it's very similar to that song. I will tell you, this one was thrower. I did not care for it my first couple listens, but it really grew on me. I mean, it's big, just like Schizoid Man.
They got the horns.
I think it's got more of that jazz fusion element than even Schizoid Man does. Schizoid Man to me sounds more free jazz, or pictures of that.
Yes.
I can't talk. It's got a stroke. Pictures of a City is more of that jazz fusion. May like it more than Schizoid Man. Not sure yet.
It was definitely a grower for me too. I particularly didn't really like the horns in the beginning, although I kind of like them now. It's very jazzy, very heavy, and also I want to mention that it's very Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It really reminds me of some of their heavier tracks, and I think you could definitely tell the direction Greg Lake was going to, given that he pretty much, I think, if I recall correctly, I remember reading somewhere that Greg Lake offered to do the vocals on this and he traded Robert Fripp for King Crimson's PA equipment or something like that.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was something weird like that. But yeah, Pictures of a City was definitely a grower for me too, actually. I enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah, like I said, I might actually like it more than Skits, but not sure. We'll see.
Yeah.
But great song. I mean, really, that's really the opener, if you will. And I think, like Schizoid Man, it's just a great, powerful, bombastic.
Some crazy good guitar on this by Fripp, by the way. Some really great guitar work.
Got some of Fripp's best guitar playing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think we should transition to track 3 here, which, again, like the first one, we have more of a mellow track, whereas Kate Cascade. This is sort of like the I Talk to the Wind of this record. I will tell you right up front that I do like this song better than I Talk to the Wind.
Oh, so do I. I actually think this is my favorite song off the album.
Ah, okay.
And this is also the only song on the album that is not sung by Greg Lake. It's sung by Gordon Haskell, who, as we mentioned, went on to be the vocalist for the next album.
For the next album, right. I will, I guess, should know with this song, because we talked about the 50th anniversary singles before, there's a really cool version that has, of course, Gordon on vocals. There is a version of Greg Lake doing vocals for this song. So they edited and put his vocals into this rendition. I guess Adrian Bello, who would be the singer and guitar player during the Discipline era, recorded vocals for this song as well. And then
Jocko,
their current singer, Jocko, how do you say his last name?
I can't remember. It's I don't know. It's like Jocko, something. Jocko, anyway.
Sorry, here I am with the pronunciation stuff again.
But that's the 50th anniversary, right?
I guess most well-known King Crimson singer. So that's a really neat version of the song that's well worth checking.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's got all 4 singers on it, which is really interesting. I will say this is my favorite version of it, though. I've heard this, and I've heard just the Greg Lake version. I like the original the best. I think Gordon Haskell's vocals are great for it.
I agree. I mean, all in all, it's pretty ballad. In the vein of "I Talk to the Wind." Not really much more to say about this.
Yeah, I really like. There's some really nice acoustic guitar. That is a theme throughout these first 4 albums that I think is kind of not as present anymore in the current King Crimson or even post this era. Is Robert Fripp's acoustic guitar playing is phenomenal, and I don't think there's a lot of that in a lot of newer. By newer, I mean like later than 1973. But they're like really in some of the.
Even just thinking.
Really, in some of the other eras of King Crimson, there's really not a lot of acoustic playing, and I think that's there's some great stuff in this album and in the other albums, like I said.
Yeah, I agree, because even thinking of some of the more laid back tracks on, like Red, for an example. So electric guitar. Yeah,
exactly. There's very little focus on acoustics in a long time, and it was one of the strongest attributes of some of the early King Crimson records, in my opinion. Some of the more lighter material, but either way, I love that track. I think Cadence and Cascade's the best track, personally.
Okay, yeah, it is one of my favorites for sure. So I guess we can move on to track 4, which closes side, and that, of course, is In the Wake of Poseidon. That's the title track.
Mm-hmm.
This one I was kind of back and forth if this is the epitaph of the record or the Court of the Crimson King of this record. Because I had mentioned when we introduced this album that I do sort of disagree with the comparisons. In that I think side 1 of this album, for sure, follows the In the Court of the Crimson King. Side 2, on the other hand, that's where I disagree. I think side 2 is, I don't want to say it's its own thing, and I'm going to get into my issues with side 2, but side 2, I don't see too many similarities with the first album. What do you think about that?
I actually completely agree with you. Side 2 is certainly weaker, in my opinion, than the first side, and I hadn't even thought of it that, but when I even look at the track list and I think of how the tracks went, you're absolutely right that the first side of this album is it's formatted similarly to the first album. Because you have the lighter. You start out with like kind of the heavy song. Well, if you don't count the little intro piece at the beginning, but Pictures of a City is kind of like a longer Schizoid Man, and then Cadence and Cascade kind of has that, like you said, I Talk to the Wind, maybe even Epitaph vibe, and then In the Wake of Poseidon has a bit of a. It's a bit longer of a tune as well, but it could be almost Court-esque, I would say, So, yeah.
I almost feel like, because it does, again, carries on those themes, political corruption, apocalypse world, similar to, the first album.
Yep.
Almost like the first half is maybe more epitaph-ish.
Yes.
Whereas the second half has more of that bombastic element.
Yeah, it goes from like light to dark.
Crimson King.
Yeah, it kind of goes from light to dark. It's this one was this one wasn't necessarily a grower for me. I actually really liked this one upon like listening to it again immediately. That one actually stuck out.
So this one, like Pictures of a City for me, was the grower as well.
Yeah.
All right, so that's side one. And oh boy, here we go. Side two. This is where. Oh boy. Well, here we go. Let's just get into it.
Yeah.
So we have track 5, continuing the peace theme. This one's just purely instrumental.
It's
Again,
just a pretty acoustic guitar bit, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to wanting to have more of that, Frippo Pants acoustic guitar playing.
Frippo Pants.
Would be nice to hear more of that, but for the minute and seconds long it is, it's fine. It's a good, I guess, palate cleanser again for what is to come, which is track 6. And oh boy, this song.
Weakest track on the album. Weakest track, Cat Food.
So here's the thing with Cat Food. And this is where I start to have my problems with lyrics. Clearly, they were going for a single here.
Yeah.
Which I believe this was a mild hit single at the time. Could be wrong about that, but it's abundantly clear listening to the lyrics of the song that they were going for a single.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Instrumentally, remove the lyrics. Instrumental, my favorite song.
Yeah.
My favorite song instrumentally. I love, like, this is funky side. This is like pre-discipline a little bit. I love the funky elements of this song. And boy, does it have a groove. And again, some of Fripp's guitar playing in this song is just freaking great. But the lyrics just really bring this song.
I actually agree with you. I'm not normally a person who I do remember thinking that the instrumentals were really interesting, but there's something about the lyrics that just suck.
It's not good. Got food. I just can't get into it. It's not my jive personally. I know you are probably a little more laid back with lyrics than I am, but I mean this is just. It's not good.
This is actually an example of one where I would actually agree with you, where the lyrics were a little off-putting for me, but I did enjoy the instrumental as well, but it's certainly the weakest track in my opinion.
Yeah, no, like I said, instrumental, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Fripp, David Singleton, I think he's the guy that's doing anniversary singles. If you're listening to this, put out an instrumental version. Love it.
Yeah, I agree. An instrumental version of the song would be great. That might actually redeem the song a little bit.
I think it rocks. It really does. But just those lyrics are just beyond print-worthy.
Yeah, they're just not good. So, folks, if you decide to listen to this song, make sure you just pay attention to the music and try to avoid the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's
laughable lyric. It's
not often where I'll say the lyrics kind of compromise the song, but it does a bit in this song. I have to say. So we're totally on point together on that one.
All right, so I think let's move on to the Devil's Triangle, and so this is another one. So we were talking about when we talked about in the Court of the Crimson King, you had mentioned Mars.
Yeah.
This song is actually based off of Gustav Holst's Mars, Bringer of War.
Mm-hmm.
Now, originally he was going to have a live arrangement on this album, but I guess Holst's estate got involved, and they're like, no, you're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. So they did sort of their own rendition using some of the themes from that song.
Mm-hmm.
This is clearly... This is really the take of what we get of the avant-garde side of this band.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, boy, do they get better.
Yeah, they do get better, yeah. I think I enjoyed this song well enough, but it could have been maybe 5 minutes shorter.
Yeah, there are definitely elements of this song I like, but overall, this is one I can't get into. I do kind of like the sampling. They sample themselves. That's pretty cool. I can't really think of anybody else that was doing that in 1970. Of course, I'm referring to the sampling of the song in the Court of the Crimson King at the very end of it.
You literally read my mind on that, because I just thought I was going to say, well, yeah, I do like the sample of Court of the Crimson King on it.
But, I mean, like I said, throughout, there are some really cool moments in the song.
It's really dark moments. I really enjoy those.
Say that. Now you're in my mind.
Yep. See,
it does have some of those dark elements for sure. That make this band so great. But all in all, this could have been one like Moonchild, where it could have been trimmed down for sure.
Yeah, I agree. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall,
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. And then, of course, we end this record with the third piece, theme piece, and light piece, a beginning. We have a little capella there with good old Greg Lake, and really nothing to talk about that one there.
Yeah, the little interludes are nice. They're they're just they add to the record a little bit, but I mean, I could do without them too, to be honest. They weren't.
Same.
They're not like that. They aren't an essential part of the record for sure.
So before we wrap off, oh boy, this first episode is up our final thoughts for this one. Let's just quickly dive in.
Okay.
Bonus and B-sides. Of course, we have the single version of Cat Food. Just further proves my point that they were trying to get a single out of that. Don't even listen to it. The B-side to that is a song called Groom. It was an instrumental. And this song I like. This, to me, takes what I like about The Devil's Triangle, but in 3 minutes.
I liked Groon too. I thought it was a neat little instrumental piece.
Almost like a pre-read.
Yes, actually, yes. You're absolutely. We are in each other's heads today. Jeez.
So that's worth checking out for sure. And then we have the Greg Lake vocal guide of Cadence and Cascade, which we talked about, as well as the 50th anniversary version of Cadence and Cascade with Greg Lake, Gordon Haskell, Adrian Bello, and of course, Jocko. I'm not saying your last.
Jocko, Jaksic, maybe.
Jackson, okay.
I recommend listening to those two versions, but in my opinion, the album version of Cadence and Cascade is the best one.
I agree. Any final thoughts?
The only thing I wanted to say about this record is that of the King Crimson records that I've listened to in the past, this was always my least favorite. But upon re-listening to it once, maybe a year or two ago, and especially after listening to the 40th anniversary, I think I have a new appreciation for it than I ever did. Particularly the Steven Wilson remix did a good job. And despite, there were a couple moments that weren't my favorite, but overall, I think it's a good record. I
agree. I mean, it grew on me for sure. I think I had similar opinions about this one prior. I think, given the circumstances of where the band was, I mean, they were just like this huge new thing a year ago, and then all of a sudden everyone's a band. And I think just in the circumstances of where Fripp was with the band, it's kind of understandable that they followed this album in a similar format. Again, I think side one has similar format, not so much side two. Kind of understandable. You put this record out a year ago that is a game changer. This is an era of music too where, the times changed quickly. Fast forward 1 year later to the release of this one, and Yes is getting started, and Genesis, and all these other progressive rock bands are getting started, and this is kind of outdated already, only a year later. But I do think it's a good record, all in all. I think side one is pretty strong. What are your top three?
I was just gonna say before I give my top three is that for me, I personally, this was the second King Crimson album I ever listened to after Court, and it doesn't follow Court well. That's the problem that this album has. However, if you do listen to more of their stuff and then go back to it, it lends itself well to a re-listen. But you're right, given that the band completely imploded by that point, and they had to follow up one of the greatest prog rock albums of all time, it really is a hard sell. It's really hard to follow that up. But for me, if I had to do a top three, I would honestly go, for me, Cadence and Cascade is my favorite. Then I go Wake of Poseidon, then I go Pictures of a City. That's what I would do.
Okay. For me, my number one would be Pictures of followed by Cadence and Cascade. And then honestly, my number three would be the title track and the Wake of Poseidon. Unless if you want to count Cat Food again instrumentally, there's a great song there. But otherwise, that would be my top three.
So, hey, man, we're 2 for 2. We both,
2 for 2.
Same tracks, but different order. I'll take it.
I'm thinking, though, this next record is going to be where opinions differ.
And as you guys are seeing the change now, the next record is Lizard, the third album by King Crimson.
Yeah, so this one was released in late 1970 by Island Records in the UK. It hit number 29 on the UK album charts. It was later released in North America by Atlantic Records in January 1971. So a little later than the UK. Not really later, just by a month. And reached number 113 on the Billboard 200. Fun fact, this album was actually released the same day as Emerson, Lake and Palmer's debut album.
Man, what a
little bit of irony there, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. Which is also a great album, by the way. The first ELP record. If you ever want to hear so I know this about King Crimson, but if you kind of want to hear more of what this sort of era of King Crimson sound would be like, go except maybe more keyboard heavy. Go with the first ELP record. It's fantastic. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Do you wanna list the band members for this one?
Sure. The band members were Robert Fripp again on guitar, mellotron, synthesizer, organ, and devices.
Here we go. Those devices.
He loves his devices. Mel Collins, who's a full member of the band, now played on the last record on saxophone and flute. Gordon Haskell on bass, guitar, and vocals. Andy McCulloch, I think his name is, on drums. This was Andy McCulloch and Gordon Haskell. This was their sole record as full-time members of the band. And Pete Sinfield again with some very whimsical lyrics. Also, John Anderson from Yes guests on one of the tracks. And this just says Tony Levin did some re-records in 1991. So that was the lineup. The lineup was basically Fripp, Collins, Haskell, McCulloch, and Sinfield.
And to just kind of give a quick overview, dive into it track by track, this is without a doubt their most jazziest album for sure.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes, it's very, very, this is one of their strangest albums and one of their most diverse albums at the same time, in my opinion.
I think it is, and I think in terms of the jazz influence, in my opinion, I can tell you that I think it's in their favor at parts, and it goes against them as well. This was probably the first King Crimson album that really sort of divides the fan base, if you will. I think even you and I are going to be divided on this.
Yeah, we might be, and even Fripp didn't like it, right? I mean, Fripp...
No, for the longest time, this was an album Fripp just completely we mentioned Steven Wilson a couple times already. It was when Steven Wilson and Robert Fripp did the remixing for this one is where Fripp sort of gained a new appreciation, and we talked about before really checking out the 40th anniversary versions of these albums. That applies to this one more than any of their other albums.
Yeah.
So this one, for sure, you need to check out the 40th anniversary.
Yes, I own it on vinyl as well, and I do love the vinyl as well. But the 40th anniversary edition was, again, I can't... with all four of these albums, I can't say enough about it. Fantastic. Fantastic versions. Steven Wilson did a bang-up job. For sure.
Want to get into it track by track?
Sure, might as well.
All right. So we are side one, track one. A song called Circus. And so... okay song. Thinking back on the last two albums, we had strong openers against Sweaters of the City. I feel like I would have appreciated this song a little more if it were later on the record. By all means, I don't dislike the track, but this is not an opener for me. I will say that I do really like the second half of this song, specifically towards the end, that acoustic breakdown. We keep talking about how we wish Fripp would incorporate more of his acoustic playing. This song further validates that for me. Great second half of the song. I gotta tell you though, Gordon Haskell, my least favorite vocalist in King Crimson.
So I will agree that he's probably my least favorite vocalist in King Crimson. I do love his vocals on Cadence and Cascade though.
I do like his vocals on that, yes.
but I still really love the song. And first of all, you mentioned the acoustic breakdown. I love that. The horns aren't my favorite. Sometimes that's probably the weakest part about this album for me. Is sometimes the horns are a little out of place, in my opinion. They kind of come in at odd times. Like there'll be certain points where the music is really quiet, and then these like loud horns come in, and it's a bit jarring at times. But I overall love this song. I really like the piano on it. We forgot to mention a guy named, I think his name is Keith Tippett, who did some keyboards and piano on this album, but he just wasn't really credited.
Did I not know? Yeah, I didn't mention. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but the song kind of starts out with some nice little keyboards in it that I really love, and the lyrics are a bit silly, but it's at times again chaotic, but also light, and I don't know. This was a grower for me when I first heard this album, but I've listened to this album enough now where I really like the song, so I can totally. I kind of totally see what you mean, though. I could see you not being a fan of the vocals, and at times it can be a bit jarring, but it's just one that's grown over time for me. And is it a good opener? Probably not.
No, like I said, I can't help slightly different with this song if it were just later on the.
Yeah.
But again, by all means, not a bad track.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, definitely not my least favorite on this album.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move on. Track 2, Indoor Games. This one was not only a grower for me, but it might be my favorite.
Again, acoustics. I hate to always reference the acoustic guitar, but the acoustic guitar is really great on this album.
This is not only another acoustic number, but this is like an acoustic rocker.
Yep.
And boy, does this song, like, this is really a jam right here. This is a great song, great chorus. Haskell's vocals don't bother me on this song as much.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been a single. I really do think this could have been a.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is definitely one of the stronger tracks in my opinion as well. I don't know what really to say to it. I've heard it a bunch of times. Like there's something to be said about each track of this album. Even if you're not a fan of the song, this is probably the most layered King Crimson album that I could think of. There's just so much going on in every song. I mean, guitars, you have like various different horns, you have like keyboards, like so many. It's just very, very, very layered. I don't know how else to describe it. I don't have another adjective.
and that's what I really love about this song. And this is a band that's known to have long tracks, where you really get to see them at their best instrumentally. What's great about this song is that's sort of compacted in, 4.5 minutes?
Yep.
And it's a really good balance of the jazz elements, as well as the acoustic elements, that this record has as a whole, but in this song specific. I think in a lot of ways, this is a good song to include on sort of like a introduction playlist.
I agree. Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it's probably, there's another track that we're going to talk about that stands out, but I think this might be my favorite.
I could see that. It's definitely a highlight for me. I really like the song, but yeah, it's I don't really know if I have anything else to say about it, to be honest. Like,
so that's your cue for moving on. Then.
It's not my favorite one, but I still really love it. I will kind of sort of state this before we go further. This actually has become one of my favorite Crimson records. Surprisingly, it's a really eclectic album, but this was again, to use your term, a grower album for me. But a long time ago, I got into this album years ago, and I put it on now, and I find myself putting it on pretty often, actually, when I listen to King Crimson. Surprisingly.
Yeah, I know that this one's one of your favorites, and I don't want to too deep into my opinion until we wrap this one up. But yeah, this is one that hasn't been sitting well for me.
Well, let's move on to Happy Family, okay?
So, Happy Family, track 3. Yeah, so my least favorite track thus far.
Yeah.
And I'm talking first 3 albums. This is without a doubt my least favorite song. This song is like everything that I hate about Cat Food, but worse. At least Cat Food is redeemed again by the instrumentals. This song to me is just too goofy.
Yeah, I actually like this song. I think it's better than Cat Food.
Okay.
But I could see why the lyrics are kind of cheesy, but instrumentally I think it's a cool song.
And see, and that's the thing. Where again, Cat Food, I love it instrumentally. I even too cheesy, too David sounding. It's just I don't know, just not my.
Yeah, I could see you like the vocals in this one are pretty. They're a little rough, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes to that distorted sounds like you know.
Yeah, not, like I said, not. Yeah, just not a good track in my opinion.
It is followed by Lady of the Dancing Water, which is a highlight in my opinion. It goes back to that. I think Gordon Haskell's really good for a really good vocalist for kind of ballady songs like that.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think this is sort of in that vein of again. I talked to it's in Cascade. I don't think I like it as much as those other two, but very much in that vein. And I do agree because I do like his vocals in King. I don't know if it's just his vocal style, his vocal delivery. I don't know. Seems to work more for the more ballady tracks as opposed to these goofy songs like Happy Family.
Yes, I agree, and I love the piano on that song a lot. On Lady of the Dancing Water, there's a little flute on there, which is always a winner for me. And yeah, his vocals are nice. It's a nice little tune, Lady of the Dancing Water. It's a short little tune too, so it's very digestible. You know, only 2 minutes. That's another thing I could say about maybe about the last couple tracks, where even if you're not a fan, they are short tracks for the most. I think Circus is a little longer, but Indoor Games and Happy Family are both, and Lady of the Dancing Water aren't like the longest tracks. So at least it's, you know, kind of a short pain if you don't like them.
Yeah. So that's side one. And side two. So this is the first, and actually it might be the only album where all of side two is one track.
Yep.
And that, of course, is the song Lizard. It is broken down into different subsections.
Yep.
And you ready for this, Rob? You ready?
Yeah, I do want to say that this is a perfect example of like the epic sidelong prog rock track. I think you're right that this was the first time they attempted something like that.
I think it's the first time for this band. It might be the only time. I will tell you, not a fan.
Not of Lizard, the track Lizard?
Not a fan.
Wow.
There are sections of this song that we'll dive into a little bit that I do really like. This song for me could have been easily trimmed down, I don't know, 12 minutes.
I could see it being shorter. I actually really love the track Lizard, and
I mean, right in the beginning we have the Prince Rupert Awake section, which features John Anderson. Yes, it's fine. His vocals are good, of course. John Anderson's a phenomenal vocalist. We talked about, you know, the mystical lyrics, not really my thing, so, you know, it's fine. I will tell you, though, the second section of the song, Bolero, the Peacock's Tail, is not only my favorite section of this song, but I think that is one of the greatest moments in music I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah, the horns.
That section
so
there is just... Music doesn't get any... I mean... And actually what I like is there's a version of just that section of the song that was later released on the Frame by Frame box set, as well as one of the 50th anniversary singles. I'm so glad that we got a version of just that section of the song, because I just, it's beautiful. I love it. I think it's just some of the greatest moments in this band's music, as well as just music as a whole. What are your thoughts on the first two?
That's a pretty big statement, but I'm actually glad, like, if you're not, like, thrilled with this album, that you found some, like, shining, you know, gem in there, you know? That's why it's always worth it, people, to listen to albums all the way through, even if you're not feeling it right away, because you could have hated this album, but then missed out on Bolero, right? So, but yeah, I love this whole piece. Personally, I do like my sidelong prog epics, though. I think it's all great. I love John Anderson's vocals really make Prince Rupert Awakes, and I personally, again, it's just a difference of opinion with lyrics. I like whimsical, like fantasy lyrics, and this has it. As well as like Lady of the Dancing Water. It's kind of both of them kind of have that whimsical sound. But John Anderson's like top 10 vocalist for me. I love the man. So
he's great.
He could sing like about like taking a shit, and I would enjoy it because I just love his voice, you know. But I love that, and I agree. Bolero is a huge those horns, and it's kind of got like a Spanish conquistador kind of sound to it. I really love Bolero. I don't know. I love the whole sidelong track. I think it's really epic, and it's the highlight for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and don't get me wrong. You know, share that love of, you know, the prog epics like you do. Mm-hmm. This one's just not one of my favorites.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah, I could.
I will say, in addition to Bolero, of course, I do really like the Battle of the Glass Tears as well, specifically the Dawn song part of the piece. Mm-hmm. It's one of the few times Haskell's vocals don't really bother me. I think they work.
Yeah.
And that's the melody section of the song. We talked about that before. I don't know. I almost feel like for me, had this song just been trimmed down to the Bolero and the Battle of Glass Tears sections, it would be my favorite.
So it's mostly, it sounds like it's just a bit too long at the end for you, and maybe some of the beginning you're not a fan of, but it sounds like if it was just a little shorter, you'd be all right.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and again, you know, I love John. Yes, is probably my favorite. Mm-hmm. But I can do without the Prince Rupert Awake section as well as the end of the song.
I like it because there isn't a bunch of noodling in it. I actually think they actually did make a conscious effort to break it. Like, this lends itself well to having like the subsections of the song where it's like broken up, because I think you can clearly define each piece of the song. But I don't know. I think it works personally, but I could totally see, like, Lizard's a difficult album, so I could see why anybody wouldn't necessarily be a fan of all of it, but I think just because I've listened to it so many times that a lot of those sections have grown on me, you know?
And I'll mention, too, and that's the... Mm-hmm. Despite the fact I've been spending the last 2 weeks on these first 4 records, and have listened to this one a lot, maybe it just needs more time.
Yep.
I will say, and I think even you would agree with me on this, this is not one I would start with for this band.
No, this would be a very late. Like, I had listened to many of their other albums before I really gave this one a shot, and it took quite a few listens for me too. It was one of those albums where you might not like it the first time, or maybe you kind of like it, and it takes like several listens, and then you're like, oh, there we go, like it clicks. So I'm pretty sure Robert Fripp. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Robert Fripp called. I read somewhere that he called fans of this album very strange.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
So and then again with this one, any last thoughts on the song Lizards?
No, I think we're good. I think we should move on.
All right, so really quick, we'll just cover bonus and B-side stuff. Mm-hmm. Alternate mix of Lady of the Dancing Water. It's fine. Again, the original version, as far as I'm concerned, is better, even though that's not a track I'm a big fan of to begin with. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the Bolero mix. It's just that song on its own. Mm-hmm. I think that's great. That's worth checking out, of course. And then there's a studio run-through of Circus with some guided vocal stuff. I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even bother to listen to that. Yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on this album?
For me?
Yeah.
I love this album. It's become one of my of this period of the band. It's become one of my favorites. But I will say I totally get why it would be a hard listen to for some people. So I say be patient with this album, and if you don't like it after several listens, then then maybe it's just not for you. But I really enjoy this album. I think there's a couple weak moments on it. Sometimes the horns in some of the earlier sections are a bit much. But there's some great acoustic guitar work, some great piano work. Oh, I should say there's a really, really great one of the 50th anniversary remasters of Prince Rupert Awakes, and it's Keith Tippett's piano. It's just the piano isolated, and it's fantastic, so listen to that.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
It's so good.
Right.
It's so good.
So good.
And
yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe this is playing underneath all the stuff on Prince Rupert Awakes. But there's a lot of subtle moments in this record, and there's a lot of it's a very layered record. I think if you really like jazz and stuff like and classical, there's a lot of blend of that in this. And yeah, no, I really like. I'm a big fan. It's really weird. I like kind of weird stuff like this. And randomly, our friend Dan is also. I think this is one of his favorite King Crimson albums, and he's not even a fan.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah. He's not even a fan of the band, but he loves this album for some reason.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Big fan of the next album that we're to, and I'll mention why I think. But that's interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah.
For me, in terms of final thoughts, this record personally is just too over the top. I appreciate the direction that they were trying to take.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think the execution was entirely there. It seems like Frippo Pan agreed with that for the longest time, but his opinion seemed to have changed on this one. Yeah, I don't know. There's some cool moments here, but just not a favorite for me. We got to do our top three. What are your top three for me?
My top three, number one would go to Lizard, the entire piece. And then I'd go Lady of the Dancing Water, then Circus. That's my list.
Okay, wow. So for me, oh boy, hard. So I guess for me would be my number one would the Bolero and the Battle of the Glass Tier section of Lizard.
Uh-huh.
That would be my number one. I think that's like just the best parts of that whole song.
Mm-hmm.
And Indoor Games would be my number two, and then Circus would probably.
Okay.
Like second half of that song.
I could totally agree with that too, because I think Indoor Games, it's tough between Indoor Games and Circus, but I think I like Circus just a little bit more.
Okay.
Although I love Indoor Games, it's a great song.
Great song.
And I would agree with you that Happy Family is the weakest track on the album, if that's what your consensus is.
Without a doubt, the weakest track.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to move on to album number 4?
Yes, album number 4 is Islands, and as you can see on the screen here, there's two different album covers. The one that's like the constellation, like I forget what constellation that's supposed to be, is the original UK pressing of the album cover, and then the other one is basically the Western US and Canadian version of the album, which is not nearly as interesting in my opinion. But anyway, I like the celestial look of the other album.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this might be my favorite album cover out of the first 4.
I think so too. For me, I like it. It's kind of like a psychedelic look to it. It's kind of spacey. It's cool.
Yeah, and in many ways, this one's really their most, at least in this era, they're the most psychedelic.
Yes.
And that is, of course, Islands, which was released in 1971 on, again, Island Records. It reached number 30 on the UK album. And critically, this one didn't do too well. It is often cited by many as the weakest out of the first 4 records.
I would disagree with that personally, but
I would disagree with that too, and we'll get into that a little second. But do you want to introduce them?
Sure. So again, the entire band, pretty much the entire band, dissolved again, leaving just Fripp and Sinfield. Excuse me, Mel Collins stuck around. So anyway, Fripp is on guitar, mellotron, harmonium, sundry implements, and production. Pete Sinfield does lyrics, sounds, and visions, cover... Oh, he did the cover design, I didn't know that. And production. Mel Collins did saxophone, flute, bass flute, backing vocals, and production. Ian Wallace, drums, percussion, backing vocals, and production. And then Boz Burrell, later of Bad Company, did bass, lead vocals, and production. Fun fact, Robert Fripp and Ian Wallace taught Boz Burrell how to play bass for this album because they had a bass player that dropped out, and instead of trying to find again another bass player, they just decided to teach Boz how to play.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because a couple of tracks where, yeah, you very much hear that this guy was just taught how to play bass for sure.
Yeah.
Did he play? Because I know you had mentioned he was later in Bad Company, of course. Was he the bassist in that?
Yes, he was the bass player for Bad Company, so
Okay.
it served him well.
And we should also, yeah, seriously, and we should also. This is the only record that Bose Burrell does lead vocals on.
Yeah, it's the only record featuring him and Ian Wallace, actually.
That's right.
Who have both
yes.
passed away since, by the way, sadly.
Yes. Rest in peace, as well, of course, Greg Lake. I don't think we mentioned that before.
And also, Mel Collins randomly, after many years, is in the band again as of like 2014 and hadn't been in the band for like 30 years or something, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, him and really, I think Tony Levin.
Yep.
At this point, have been the only two that have really been in the band the longest, besides Fripp, of course. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this one. Side one. Track one, we start out with Formentera Lady. I love this song.
So do I.
We've been referencing strong openers, and this one definitely is a slow start, but for this track, I think this is a good opening track.
I think so too, and it kind of really lends itself to the whole vibe of the record, which is very different. I would say it's. I think this is probably their most mellow record, if I had to pick one.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I love everything about this. Just how lush the piano sounds.
Mm-hmm.
This one right here, I can tell you, Bose's vocals over Gordon Haskell,
mm-hmm.
last singer. But again, you can definitely, listening to this song and a lot of tracks on this, you can hear that bass. You can hear that, yep, this is a guy that barely knows how to play the bass guitar. But it does seem to work in its favor.
It does, yeah. Well, as we've discussed, it's not just about musicality. You know, it's I think the bass playing is certainly good enough, and it fits with the whole vibe of the album and the song too. So.
No, and I agree. Of course, it's not all about the music. Funny though that given the band we're talking about, this is a band where despite the many members that came and left are just proteges of their instrument. They kind of got this one guy like, hey, we need you to play bass too. Just kind of funny, but
yeah, it is.
I think again the bass playing does work in its favor with the sound of this album.
Yes, I agree. I actually completely agree with that.
And then the second half of this song, the soprano vocals is done by this lady named Paulina Lucas, who I'm a fan of. But again, it's just a great addition to the vibe and ambiance to this track. I love it. I think this is a great song.
Me too. Her vocals remind me a bit of what Pink Floyd did with Great Gig in the Sky on Dark Side of the Moon. Where she
there you go.
She mostly uses her voice to accent like this music rather than to actually, sing the lyrics, which is pretty interesting. And I like Boz's vocals on this too. Very light,
Yeah, no, this is a great song. This one's definitely one of my favorites. So we have track 2, which is Sailor's Tale. This one is a instrumental, of course. Mm-hmm. And I would say out of all the songs on this record, this one's probably the closest sounding to the first 3.
Yeah.
It's another song where, again, it was a tad bit shorter. I think they execute their instrumental better on the next 3 records. Because they have some instrumentals, rad, Lars Tongen aspects that are a little short, but are just, I think, better. But I will say, Fripp does rip on this song.
Yes, he does. That's the highlight of this track, in my opinion. I think it's I think it's a good tune. It's not my favorite instrumental that they've done, but it's good. I think it transitions well from Formentera Lady. I'll say that.
I agree.
But it wasn't anything. I don't recall it like really, really sticking out to me too much, you know. But I did enjoy it. I think it blends itself with the rest of the record very well. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Not really much more to say about that one, though.
Yeah, same. Yeah, then we have the letters,
So,
right?
the letters, which is track 3. I'll tell you that this not a bad track necessarily. It is my least favorite on.
I actually really like this track. I love the part. I like how it's really soft, and then the lyrics, particularly the part where he like all of a sudden just yells, and he's like impaled with nails of ice. It's like that's so Crimson.
I love that you brought that line up specifically because when you mentioned Dan before, when we were talking about lizards, this is where I'm surprised this isn't one that he really liked. This song, as well as the next track, Ladies of the Road, I get some Zeppelin vibes. This song specifically with that line totally sounds like Robert Plant. Totally. Which I guess kind of makes sense since, you know, he ended up playing with Bad Company and they were, you know, in the vein of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, and Boz kind of came from that, like, more rock and soul and R&B kind of background, so you could tell that he brought a little of that to King Crimson.
Yeah, for sure. And I was reading up a few. Apparently, the basis of this song is derived from the Giles and Fripp song "Why Don't You Just Drop It In?"
Wow.
Which I don't know that song, of course.
I don't either.
Yeah, little fun fact for you.
And
but yeah, not really too much more to say about that one personally, but definitely some Led Zeppelin vibes on that one.
They played this live when I saw them, and I really liked it.
Did they really?
Yes, they did. It was very interesting to see, especially with 4 drummers. But
I think I did see. I came across a list a couple weeks ago. It was Daco's top 10 favorite King Crimson songs, and this one might have been on here.
Wow.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Which makes sense if they're playing it. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, the letters. That is the last track that ends side 1. We're gonna get into side 2, track 4, which is Ladies of the Road, and this one I think King Crimson going Led Zeppelin. Like this is their closest thing to borderlining hard blues rock, whatever you want to
This
call
might
it.
be the closest thing to them for them as to a pop song, you know?
Yes, I agree. This totally gets some of like that Beatle-esque harmonies, which again, the Beatles are my favorite band, so I always love hearing that influence in anybody's sound. So
and the lyrics, and the lyrics are like, dare I say, about sex.
Yeah, and then that's where
weird.
I go back to my Zeppelin. Lyrically, this feels like a Zeppelin song.
Yeah. Apparently, fun fact, I want to pull this out. Apparently, they played this live, and Robert Fripp's like parents or something were in the audience at one show, and he apologized to his mother on stage for the song, like for the lyrics.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, you know, all in all, the song has some cool elements. Again, another favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Crimson going all Led Zeppelin.
It's an interesting too. It's definitely different from them. For me, it's probably the weakest track on the album, but I still really like it. I don't think this is. I don't really think this album has a really weak track in my opinion. I think it really flows well, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. I would agree with that. I would say this one's probably my least favorite as well.
This one is. This was another one that I hadn't heard in a while, and when I listened to the 40th anniversary Steven Wilson mix the other day, it was like I heard the album for the first time again, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it, actually. So.
Nice. So then that brings us to track 5, a prelude, Song of the Goals, and this one a instrumental as well. And really, I mean, there's really not too much to say about this track either. This one clearly serves as a segue into the closing track.
Yeah, it's like a pretty little like you said, interlude kind of track that leads to Islands, really.
I like it though. It's it's very pretty sounding.
Me too. Yeah.
Touches upon those classical influences again. Um, but really, that's really all there is to say.
Yeah, exactly. It leads to what is, without a doubt for me, the standout track of the whole album. That's the self-titled track, Islands.
Yeah, so let's talk about this one. I'll just say right off the bat, this is my favorite on the record, and it is my favorite track amongst the first 4 albums.
Wow, really? Even over like the stuff on Court?
Yeah.
Wow,
absolutely.
That's a big statement. Damn.
I love this song. This to me is kind of, it almost sounds proto-post rock a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Talk Talk.
Yep.
But this song very much sounds like it could have been the blueprint for Talk Talk's last 2 records.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It's got a lovely melody, like a lovely vocal melody to it, and they actually played this live too when I saw them, which was.
I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they play this.
I hope they play it for you because this actually song really stood out to me when I saw them live. I was like, wow, that is a great song. So.
And you want to talk about timing, by the way, as we're recording this show today. Friday, as you know, is when the are released. And the only issue I have with this song, and it's not even the song, I think it's just the version that's on Spotify. It has the stupid studio banter at the end, and it totally takes away from the vibes of this song.
Mm-hmm.
But then they had to go ahead and release a version of this song today, only with Jacko on lead vocals. It is the sorry, I'm blanking out here. It's still the backing track, but with Jacko on vocals. And I gotta tell you, already I think I like that.
You like that version better?
I do, and it might just be because I think Jacko, I'll just go ahead and say it now, even though we're on episode 1, Jacko's my favorite vocalist.
Wow,
for King Crimson.
That is a big statement. He is able to cover pretty much all the periods of the band, though, especially having seen him live.
What I like about him so much is that he is able to emulate all the different eras of the band.
Yeah.
So
I think this is a great track, instrumentally and otherwise. I think the lyrics are really nice. I don't know. This was also a highlight to me. It's kind of a longer song, but I think it's worth every minute of it. So the studio stuff at the end is a little meh, but I'm also I'm kind of indifferent to it. I just consider it a separate piece, really. So
yeah, we talked about headphone tracks before, and this is another one where just put headphones on, get lost to this song. It's an experience in of itself. I really don't know what else to say. It's like I said, it's my favorite it's my favorite if we were to rank all the songs just from the first 4. This is just a great song.
Wow, that's a pretty big statement, but it's cool. The song really is. I really recommend if anybody's gonna listen to any track on this album, it would be that one. I agree.
So let's dive into the bonus stuff and B-sides really quick.
Okay.
So first we have, this isn't on Spotify, but it is on the physical version of the 40th release of Islands,
mm-hmm.
and this song's called A Peacemaking Stint Unrolls.
Uh-huh.
This was an unreleased track. It almost kind of sounds like an early version of Lark's Tongue and Aspect.
Yeah, because that wouldn't have been too much later after this anyway, so that makes sense.
Barely just shy of 2 years. So that's worth checking out on. Maybe we can even post that on our channel. I don't know, have you listened to this song?
No, I've never heard it.
Oh, no. I was reading the comment section this morning before we recorded, and other people were saying that they heard elements of The Great Deceiver. Lament was another song. I don't know. Like I said, I hear the first Lark's Tongue and Aspect, but it's definitely worth checking out. None of the last definitely isn't in the vein of this record, so it's interesting that it was released, or I shouldn't say released because it wasn't released at the time, but recorded during this time period. But it's cool. It's a cool early take of whatever.
Now I have some homework to do, and I'll have to watch it or listen to it.
Check it out. Even we talk about it on the next episode. thought of it.
I did listen to the Ladies of the Road 50th anniversary single, which was pretty good too. And I guess you said there was another single that came out today?
Literally today, and that's of Islands. And again, it's the original backing track, original band that recorded it, just with Jacko on vocals.
And you said you like that version better, right?
I do. I got to tell you, I do. And listen to the commentary by Dave Singleton before, because just the whole background behind that song and why Jacko recorded it and why it's his favorite King Crimson song is very touching, and it kind of is really the precursor as to how him and Fripp met each other. Really neat.
Well, I'm gonna have to listen to that tonight then.
So let's do this. Let's rank 3 favorite for this one,
and then rank the albums, right?
Final thoughts, and then we'll rank the 4 albums.
Okay. My 3 in order would be Islands, Formentera Lady, The Letters.
I gotta think here. Okay, so mine would be Islands as well. That would be my first favorite. Formentera Lady would definitely be my second favorite. And my number 3 for this one, that's kind of hard, but I would probably have to say Sailor's Tale. Because again, it's another one where if it were just a little shorter, I feel like I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that probably would have been my 4th favorite if I had another one to pick. And not that I don't like Ladies of the Road, I just it's not, it's a good song, but it's not very crimson-y, And I don't know, I could do without it personally, but it's still it's not a bad song,
Yeah, no, fair enough. So what are your final thoughts
on Islands, or just as a whole on this period?
Islands, and then we'll talk about the period as a whole.
I think it's a great record. I think probably more so than especially something like Wake of Poseidon, the album flows really well. It's very different for King Crimson. It's definitely their most mellow album in my opinion, but I do really like it. At one time I would have said it was one of my favorite albums, but that was a long time ago. So I went a long time without hearing this, and but I will say, after listening to, like I said, the 40th anniversary remaster, it was kind of like listening to it for the first time again, so I'll probably be listening to this one again soon.
This one's like Lizard in the sense where it's very much its own thing, and it's also like Lizard where I feel like it doesn't entirely know what it wants to be. With that being said, I do like this one better than Lizard. I think originally, and I'm even looking now, originally I did think it was the weakest of this era, but this one is really great. But it is very much its own thing, just like Lizard in that aspect. What's interesting is when we cover the other eras of the band, and the way we have each episode broken down, it's by 3 albums, and it's very fitting in a way because the next few eras of this band, it really is a trilogy where overall sound is very similar.
Yes, and the rest of their career, really,
Really, the rest of their career. I mean, Lark's, Starless by the Black, and Red are very much a trilogy. They're in that same vein. Same thing with Discipline, Beat, and 3 of the Perfect Pair. And then even the last 3 are very much like their own trilogy in of themselves. This era of the band, I think what ended up happening is, they released In the Court of the Crimson King. We mentioned in the beginning of the episode, it was very much game-changing, groundbreaking, just this new thing. And then, it took them a while to, I almost feel like, get out of the shadow of that first record.
Yeah, that you're absolutely right about that. And then also just like the lineup changes and the chaos in the band at the time. It's amazing Fripp was even able to hold like the actual band King Crimson together in any sense. Every album had a different lineup. Every album kind of had a different sound after the first one. And it's also a reflection probably of the times as well in music. Prog, you went from the birth of prog rock to, by the end of this, like sort of the beginning of the end of prog rock. This was like 73, 74, right? Or maybe more like prog was about at its peak right here. and then it would. Oh no, actually no. This would be earlier than 74. This would be like what? This was 71, right?
71.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, no. So actually, yeah, this is in the heart of progressive rock. Duh, it's Red. I'm thinking of that was the last one of this period of the 70s period, which was 74. But yeah, this was at the peak of progressive rock. So there was all kinds of bands doing all kinds of different things, and I think it like as weird as some of this music is, I think it makes sense given the state of the band and the state of music at that time. It kind of reflects that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this era as a whole, and I'm going to include in the Glory of the Crimson, this is really this band working out the kinks. I think the next episode, when we get into the Red era, that is really going to be like the King Crimson. Like that is really working.
That was the birth of King Crimson as we know it today, you know, as what would become of the band as a whole, you know, as what people think of when they hear the name King Crimson these days, the sound, you know. So
yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So I guess the other thing we should quickly throw in, I guess we should also mention that after Islands, really shortly after Islands, the old Frippo Pants again.
Frippo Pants.
Completely just disbanded the band.
Including Pete Sinfield, who, this was his last album too, so it was literally just Fripp after this.
Yeah, and as we get through this series, you're going to come to learn quickly that this is not going to be the last time that Fripp does this. This is the shortest hiatus that the band goes on. I think it was a hiatus because they toured in 72.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the Bruford Wetton lineup or if they toured with this band.
I think they toured after this record, and that was it from what I read. And then the band pretty much just dissolved.
But that would have been 72, and then Larks came out in 73. So this was a very, very short hiatus for the band, even if there even was one. We'll get into in the next couple episodes.
But the end of this,
some gaps in between this band.
The end of this album and tour was definitely the end of an era, though, and out of the ashes of this kind of birthed a new King Crimson that would become more consistent for at least a couple years and become probably some of the most iconic, really be one of the most iconic periods of the band's history.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, so let's go ahead and let's rank our top four of this era, and then we'll finally wrap it up.
Rank the albums and close it. Okay, so for me, my favorite's Court. Obviously, I'd go Court, Lizard Islands, Poseidon.
Okay,
that's what I would.
For me, I would go my number one Court as well. My number two would be Islands.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, my number two would be Islands. Number three would be Poseidon, and then number four for Lizard. I just, as of now, cannot get into that run.
Hey, maybe it'll change. You never know if you listen to it more.
Yeah, maybe. And that's an interesting point because as we discussed in the beginning of the episode, the last episode is going to be the album ranking. So our opinion on these four could change later on.
Yeah, very well could. And when we rank all of their albums, it'll be interesting to see where they all place, where these four place, you know. So, well, I think that's... I mean, do you have anything else to say about ranking them? I think that's it. I think we could probably finish up the podcast.
No, yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with these first. Now, I gotta say, I am very much looking forward to episode 2, as well as going back into that era of the band, because that is my King Crimson.
Me too. Although a little less so Starless and Bible Black. I haven't heard that one as much as Larks and Red, but I agree with you that it's one of the highlights of the band for me.
But you know what? That could change as we further get through the catalog. You know, I'm just as excited to go back to the Bellow era too, and really the '90s stuff. I'm not all that familiar, so this is good.
It should be very interesting. It's going to be. I really can't wait to deep dive further into the other 3 sections of their career and listen to some more of the albums that I'm a little less familiar with, particularly like from like the 2 later albums in the 80s period. But we'll get to there.
Yeah. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
I do want to mention before we close, Rob, that again, Sound of Music, this is a collaborative channel with Rob and I. We mentioned that we're both going to do solo. I know for me, solo content is probably not going to happen until we get through these first couple of episodes, just so, we can get used to this format and whatnot. But please be on the lookout for that. We have a lot of, you and I both, we have a lot of really cool ideas where we want to take the channel in terms of future collaborations as well as solo content as well.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing I want to point out is we are hoping that at some point that this will be both a podcast but a video format as well too. We're still working out the kinks on that. By the way, how long did this episode end up turning out?
2 hours and 4 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. and that's the other too. As we do the first few episodes, we are looking to do a smaller time frame with these episodes. We knew that this first episode was going to be on the longer side between introducing the channel, show. We have 4 records we were talking about, as opposed the future episodes will be 3.
And all the technical stuff we had to figure out, but...
And all the technical BS.
I think it went well for a first episode, man. I really enjoyed talking to you about King Crimson and just music in general. It's always fun, man.
Yeah, man. Likewise. I'm going to definitely cringe, go back and listen to this. But, no, I mean, this is really the premise of even doing this,
Yeah.
Rob mentioned in the introduction that, him and I go way back. We both have a passion and love for music. We agree on things, we disagree on things. This is really why we want to do this. This is really just an excuse to, quite frankly, BS on music.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just riff on music all day. And also, we plan to hopefully start live streaming these podcasts when we actually are able to. So hopefully, wish us luck there. We can get the technical side taken care of. But it'd be cool to take questions from people and whatnot too, and read people's comments. So
absolutely.
I hope you, pointing at the screen, look forward to that.
All right, so that's gonna be a Sound of Music. Oh, did we come up with a name for this series?
I haven't yet. I just was gonna put like episode 1, King Crimson, the early years, and then do it that way. But we could always come up with a title if you want.
Okay. Stay tuned for that as well.
Stay tuned. All right, guys. Once again, we want to thank you guys for all watching. We really appreciate it. Hope you found something interesting, and that you, if you're a King Crimson, fanatic, that we didn't screw up too many of the little factoids. And if you're a novice and you don't even know the band, hopefully you check out some of these records, because there's some great stuff here.
And please be friendly.
Yeah, be friendly. And if not, we're gonna troll you back.
King Crimson does go beyond the first 2 records.
Yes, they do. And even really, and beyond, God, there's really so many periods of the band that are interesting. So if you're limiting yourself to a certain period, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
For sure.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching.
Yes, thank you, and we will
see you in a few weeks.
See you next time, but we'll see you in a few weeks.
See you later. Peace.
Bye.